We are at Bates Nursery with an authority, David Bates, an authority on how to tell us when we want to put vertical into our gardens, whether it's a pre-existing garden, we're planting a new garden, or maybe it's even a container. And plant selection has a lot to do with that. So David, help us out.
Well, I'll be glad to, Annette. Thanks for coming out today. Now, what we've got right here in front of us is the blue spruce. Now, this is an upright, weeping blue spruce, but it's a really slow grower. A lot of landscape situations that you run into today are, many people have much smaller yards than they used to have.
That's true.
And so the big consideration anymore with new plant varieties being developed are plants that will do the same thing, give you the same look, but do it within bounds, that will be able to keep it within the confines of the area that you've got to work within. And certainly this is one of those plants that would do that quite well. This plant typically won't get much more than about 8 to 9 feet in height. The biggest mistake that many homeowners will make in purchasing an upright plant, be it as a focal plant or as a corner plant for the home, is that they fail to realize what the ultimate growth habit of this plant is going to be.
Right.
They'll plant it at the scale that it looks right at that size when they purchased it, without allowing that as time passes, this thing could get much larger. And that's a common mistake that many landscaper people who are landscaping their homes make. They just simply put them too close. So you may have the space to afford something larger. Just be apprised of what the growth habit is, and what its needs are going to be ultimately. Wow. You don't want to have a plant that's going to get 20, 25 feet tall stuck under the eave of the house. Wow. You want to bring it out enough where it has room to grow.
Let's go check out some more possibilities then. David, let's talk about blue color on the spruce and some of these other blue plants and these yellow plants.
Right.
Now, can you expect a 12-month season all year of color, or do they go through stages of where they're not as brilliant?
Well, there is some fluctuation due to the time of year, but as a general rule, they're going to retain that color year-round. When the new growth comes out, it's usually more vibrant, and as the season fades on, they do fade a bit into the hot part of the summer, but as cold weather returns, you see that intense blues and golds come back that the cold weather really brings out. Yeah,
and if you're planning on that color as part of your impact, then you need to consider that. Now, this plant what is this?
This is a weeping white spruce, and this is another great addition for a plant as an accent plant, a focal plant, something that where you need something upright, but you don't want it to grow at a ridiculously fast rate. You know, over a 10-year period, this may reach 10 feet in height. So it's something that is manageable. It's not going to outgrow your area. And really, in Middle Tennessee, it would be unusual to see that much growth come out of this.
I love to add this color in my garden because it's something that brings colors together, even though it's not chartreuse, but yellow is one of my favorite things, so this would be a good way, wouldn't it?
Well, this is a nice soft yellow. Sometimes some of the golden colors are so brilliant that they perhaps are overbearing, depending on what other elements you have in the landscape, but the golden deodar cedar is certainly a lovely addition to any landscape. It has that natural weeping growth habit. It does need to be staked in order to keep it growing upright. So once it runs off the end of the stake, it's going to begin to start to turn over sideways, and then you'll start seeing growth protrude down from it.
I'm familiar with this. This is the forest pansy in the weeping form.
Well, yeah.
Or whatever, you tell me.
This is Ruby Falls. You don't have to go to Rock City to see it. You can have one in your own home. This is a Ruby Falls redbud, and it is an excellent weeping form of redbud. And you see, it is a staked up tree, and that's necessary all during the growing process when you have it in cultivation in a nursery. That could be removed after a year in the ground. However, if you want to continue to train it up to keep it from being quite so low, it will tend to want to stretch back down to the ground. So it may be something that you want to continue to grow up for a bit. Yeah,
and not only are the leaves burgundy, but the color of the bark on this is so beautiful. And when this plant blooms in the spring, it is just clustered everywhere.
All the way up and down the stem.
And listen, this year, everything that bloomed was heavy fruited and heavy seed pods.
In the landscape for many years, there is the tendency when people find a plant they like, the thought that more is better is really not true.
Right.
And you tend to create problems when you do a monoculture type of planting. When you plant huge numbers of a single type of plant, any characteristic flaws that it has, anything it is susceptible to, becomes revealed and greatly magnified. And Leland cypress is one of those examples that you see throughout the landscape. They've been used for years. They have been a great fast-growing screening plant. They do wonderful for that, except for one thing. They are susceptible to a couple of different diseases that there is no cure for. They get issues that come up, and you can perhaps, if it's a lesser type, you might be able just to prune a limb or two. More often than not, you wind up having to take the whole plant out. And then that's just one. If you have a screen of 15 of them, then it never happens on the end. It's always in the middle. So you have to transplant one in the middle, and so the process goes on. Green giant Arborvitae is a great solution to Leland cypress. They don't have the incidence of disease issues that will wipe out the whole block of them. So they're easier to take care of.
Okay, now we're in some of these shade-tolerant plants. But you know, there's an important factor right here before us. When people buy plants and they've got a visual of how the proportion of this plant is going to be in their landscape, they overlook an important thing. This plant is going to step down, and it's going to lose
almost
a foot of height.
So it's not 4 feet tall, it's 3 feet tall.
That's right. So they need to remember that factor.
It's very important because it can set you up for disappointment and depression, and we don't want that to happen.
No
but
depression.
If it's planted well, there's every reason to expect it to grow and do
fast.
well.
Okay, now tell us about this.
Now, the Cephalotaxus or plum yew, then this is what is known as a Fastgiata, which in Latin just means it grows upright and skinny. That's what that means. So this plum yew is like many of the other plum yews. It's great in the shade. The most difficult of all landscape situations to deal with is lack of light. You can do almost anything when you've got light, and I've got someone who sent me an email yesterday that has this garden, and she's tried for years and can't do things well with it. But when you have shade gardening, you have to adjust your expectations, or you got to be prepared to cut some trees down and get light in there. This is one of those plants that affords you to be able to have a nice evergreen plant and not have to worry about the lack of light. It will grow well at even heavy shade.
And you know, we're going into another whole section for the garden with this dark green. The glossy is another texture, another surface. And what goes so well, people love white gardens, white blooms. I can see white azaleas, I can see white impatiens, white caladiums, and how this would give you the line with those plants.
Absolutely.
That's a good one. There is an acorn.
So what does that tell you?
It must be an oak.
I think you're right. And this is a Regal Prince oak. And what is unusual about this tree, being an oak, is that you see it's very upright growing. It is, again, Fastgiata. It has that columnar growth habit. And this makes it a great street tree for sidewalk neighborhoods where you have a close proximity from a little planting strip by the road between there and the sidewalk, where you really don't have the room for a lower branch tree. This is a great choice for something like that, where you can give you some upright, vertical, straight up growth, have some shade from it, but not have the limbs over there fighting you in the face. If you're walking or walking the dog or out just taking a stroll, it's nice to not have those tree limbs. And you may have trees that you just simply don't want to limb up way over your head.
Well, David, I said I was going to go to an authority, and you've proven that. You've given good ideas for me and for our homeowners, and thank you for letting us come into your busy day.
I appreciate you coming out today.
Thank you.